Some people might think I'm crazy when I say this, but I've been blessed. Every single time I wrestle with my son on the floor, I hug my daughter. It's pretty special. If some guy went up to one of my kids and did anything appropriate, they'd tell him to fuck off. I wasn't allowed to question anything. I wasn't allowed to speak up. Whether it's the church or my home life, I can't say anything. Watching your children and parenting them in a way that you didn't get to be parented is healing. If I can be here telling my story, you can do whatever the fuck you want to.
Welcome back to the Angela Rose Show, where we discuss religious, sexual, emotional, physical, and psychological abuse. So please listen with care. Hey guys, it's Angela with the Angela Rose Show, where we unveil stories of religious abuse. Today, I'm so honored to have a guest that traveled all the way from Canada, Laverne. I'm just honored you made the trip. Like, very honored.
I'm just grateful that you let me come here. It's been
Yeah.
quite the ride.
Yeah,
But
you
I'm
have
happy-
had quite a trip.
I'm happy to be here. It's so important for us to talk about what we've been through
Yeah.
to help others, right? To raise awareness, let others know what they're going through.
That's what it's all about, Laverne. And when you booked your trip to come and just didn't hesitate, I thought, this is a man who knows the value of storytelling and inner child work and really just sharing in a way that others can feel safe and safe to show up real and that they're not alone. And that's what this is about.
So much so.
Yeah.
I went through a mental health crisis about 8 years ago, and I made a lot of realizations through that time, but one of them was the stigma around mental health is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
And so I started talking up about it. And the first time I did it, I had someone reach out to me and say, "Man, you were writing my story." The same exact things. And I started realizing
Well,
how many people are too scared to even go to therapy
yeah.
because what they're going through they think is abnormal, and they don't realize how normal it is. And so yes, I am very committed to talking and telling my story to help others.
Wow, what a gift. So I really want to start from the beginning and hear about the church community that you were born into.
Absolutely. So I was born in northern Alberta, Canada, northwestern Alberta. My parents were and still are members of the Holdeman Mennonite community or church, also known as Church of God in Christ Mennonite.
Okay.
And
Okay.
I grew up in a place called Crooked Creek, which is the Rosedale congregation.
Okay.
Yeah. So as someone mentioned to earlier, it's in the middle of nowhere for a lot of
Okay.
people. Yeah, it's considered north, but
Sure.
it was all I knew growing up, right?
Mm.
That was life. But I started questioning it very early on. I've always questioned everything. I'm very curious. And the first time I can remember questioning anything was we were in a store in town and they were setting up for Christmas. And I asked my mom, I'm like, well, why don't we have Christmas decorations? And I don't remember the answer, I was a child, but it didn't make sense to me
Okay.
because we celebrated Christmas.
Right.
And in those communities, it's a huge ordeal. You go to church Sunday morning for sure. There's always, a Christmas program or concert.
Right.
And there's gifts. We celebrate Christmas.
Okay.
So why can't we have a Christmas tree?
Sure.
Why can't we have some Christmas lights?
Right.
Like, 5-year-old me
Mm-hmm.
couldn't reconcile that.
Interesting.
Another one that really stood out to me was we lived in a rural area, about an hour from town, and all gravel roads. And I'm out in the yard one day, and a police car drives by, lights and sirens. And I was terrified. So obviously I was really young.
Yeah.
I ran inside, and I'm like, "Mom, there's a police car," or whatever I said. And she's like, "Oh, he's going to help someone." I'm like, "Oh, I want to be a police officer."
Okay.
"No, you can't." "Well, why not? You just said they help people. Why can't I be a police officer?"
Yeah.
And so she explained their interpretation
Mhm.
of the non-resistance doctrine,
Hmm.
which I personally feel is completely skewed with how they look at it. But
Right.
I'm not a theologist.
Right.
But you might have to use violence against another person. Yeah, to protect other people.
Right.
And that just never made sense to me.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
from very early on, I was questioning everything I
Mm.
saw,
Yeah.
right? I experienced a very violent childhood. Um, and of course, then non-resistance. But here I'm experiencing violence at home.
Interesting.
So that's a bit of a contradiction there too. Or actually,
Absolutely.
not just a bit, a huge one. So I always questioned what I saw,
Yeah.
and I think at a deeper level, because obviously a 5-year-old can't articulate things like
Mhm.
that, or 8-year-old, 10-year-old,
Yeah.
but it didn't add up,
Hmm.
right? And that everything was controlling. You're told what you
Hmm.
can wear, what you can believe. Everything is dictated to you.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to ask questions
Hmm.
about anything, right? So yeah, I questioned it. I questioned a lot.
Did you ask questions, or was that something you couldn't even do? Like,
Well, part of I did ask questions,
mhm.
and those are two of the ones that really stuck with me.
Mm.
But I also wasn't allowed to question anything.
Right.
I had a very violent mother
Mm.
and a very compliant dad who
Okay.
was compliant to both the church
Mm.
and my mom.
Mm.
And so when I questioned things, I experienced a lot of verbal violence and a lot of physical violence. And so eventually you learn to question, or eventually you learn to stop questioning. But I was a very
Mm.
strong child
Mhm.
and I held firm in my beliefs.
Yeah.
When I was 8 years old, my mom had screamed at me for something, and I don't even remember what it was. And I left the house and I walked out into the barnyard, and I remember thinking, I will never join the church if
Mm.
that's the way they are. And I never did. And I have so much love for that 8-year-old boy. Um, the
Wow.
strength he showed
Yeah.
through everything that I've been through was incredible.
Wow.
And during doing somatic healing over the last 6 months, I've
Mm.
just, instead of carrying that childhood pain, I just have so much love and respect for that little Laverne.
I sense, in our times of conversation, that you're so in touch with that child that survived, and you're so true to who you always were. And
Mhm.
that's so powerful. So, did you go to a Holdeman Mennonite school then?
I did. So I was supposed to go when I think grade one started at 6.
Okay.
And
Okay.
looking back in hindsight, my mom, I was the scapegoat child. So I was fourth of 9. And
Okay, 4th of 9 kids. Gotcha.
yes.
Hmm,
Uh,
pretty big family.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I don't even know my younger siblings really,
Yeah.
right? But my mom picked on me a lot,
Yeah.
and she did a lot of things in hindsight that were nothing short of abuse. So I was supposed to go to school when I was 6, and in the months or weeks leading up to it, my mom said, "You're not ready to go to school." And so I didn't go to school. And I remember that day very clearly. I wanted to go to school so bad, so bad.
Wow.
And I couldn't go. And all my siblings, my 3 older siblings, went off to school. And I went out in the field with my dad to get hay bales. And he let me ride on the hay wagon. And I remember sitting there and just being so sad and forlorn
Mm.
and lonely.
Wow.
And yeah, that's something I got to go back to and release those emotions
Yeah.
through my healing journey, right?
Yeah.
So I did go to a Holdeman Mennonite school. I went until grade 9. Um, there was physical violence there too, right? Because the school had strappings, right? And so they used this old combine belt that they'd cut up. And I remember I threw a rock on the ground, like rolled it kind of, and another kid was laying on the ground. And I don't know if it hit him or got close to him or whatever happened. And I got a strapping for that.
Wow.
I got a few other strappings, something I used to be proud of actually
Right.
as a young teen or whatever. But yeah, that's just more violence.
Right.
And like I almost got a whipping for I was in grade 2. We were doing rhyming words, and I said rap. And the teacher's like, "Well, no, somebody said rap already." And I said, "No, rap music." And she threatened to strap me,
Oh my God.
right? And which, in those isolated communities,
Right.
insulated communities, how did I even know what rap was at
Right.
7 or 8 years old? Because there's no music, there's no TV.
You're so
Right.
isolated as it is.
So I don't know how I even knew that.
Wow.
Um,
It's just horrible.
I want to go back a little bit though,
Sure.
thinking about some of my childhood abuse. So, as you know, the Mennonites, the men all wear jeans or long pants. When I was about 4, my mom started dressing me up in khaki shorts and girls' leotards to go to church. And I can't remember her articulation of why she wanted to do that. I think it had something to do with wanting me to look like an English schoolboy, maybe, which is delusional in itself coming from that community.
Interesting.
But I would beg her not to dress me up like that.
Yeah.
And, she would take me and I'd be standing there and, women would come up and be like, "Why is he dressed like that?" Right. And I only realized, in my late 30s, 40s, that was just another form of abuse of her picking on me. Another one, I loved hot dogs as a kid.
Yeah.
Loved hot dogs. And I would put mustard, relish, and ketchup on my hot dogs. And I loved them. It was like my favorite food.
Yeah.
Now I can't eat those.
Sure.
Anyway,
Yeah. Yeah.
all of a sudden,
Yeah.
she takes me to the doctor and she tells the doctor he's allergic to mustard, ketchup, and relish. And this doctor apparently went along with it because I remember being in the doctor's office. And I think he did some tests or whatever it was. And so then I couldn't eat. I had to eat plain hot dogs. And I would beg, like, come on, let me have some, right?
Yeah.
I was just begging for it. And eventually one day I was allowed to eat it again. And I don't remember how that came about. But a couple of years ago, I was at my parents' house. It was just me and them. And we're sitting and having lunch. And my dad goes, "Remember you were allergic to like hot dogs or something once?" And I'm like, "No, it was mustard, relish, and ketchup."
Wow. Yeah.
And I don't poke the bear anymore.
Yeah.
I don't care. Like I know where this comes from. I've done my own deep dive and healing and stuff. And my mom goes, "Yeah, it never made sense to me. So I just let you start eating it again. If a doctor had told me that my kids were allergic to something, they're not touching that
Right.
until I get the all clear."
Isn't
And
that something?
to me, that's just more validation,
Validation of what was going
what was
on.
happening.
You were just being manipulated
And just
with
punished for existing. And
withheld from something that actually was important to you, and as simple as a simple pleasure of eating something you enjoyed, it was withheld
yeah.
for no good reason.
And it set me up to it set me up to not only beg for love, but just to beg just to be treated properly
Yeah.
my whole life until like,
Absolutely.
the last few years. I would do anything for someone to like me, to not, leave me, whatever it was, right?
Yeah.
But back to the Holdeman schools, grade 9, you had to graduate, and really you're not graduating anything at grade 9. Um,
Mm.
it was mostly church indoctrination,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Light on science,
Mm.
lots of religion. Um,
This brings up a question I don't think I touched on in the very beginning. Doesn't the Holdeman Church believe that they are the only true church?
yes.
Can you tell me a little bit about that? Because so we talk about the many different
Yeah.
religious groups, and people, all share from their experience what their group felt like, whether, some Mennonites feel their survivors that left feel like their experience was cultish, and others will say it was totally a cult, and others maybe will use another term.
Mhm.
But I mean, knowing what I've seen from afar about the Holdeman community, if they have it in their doctrine that they're the only church,
Yeah.
I mean, I can't think of anything more aligned to the word cult.
I agree. Um,
What do you have to say about that?
a lot, maybe.
Yeah,
Uh, if you are the only way, or your organization is the only way to salvation, or really anything else, it's a cult.
right.
That's kind of my opinion.
Interesting.
I
Okay.
won't use the word cult as much though, because you immediately lose people,
Hmm.
right?
The conversations,
Right.
yeah.
And so if there's, Holdemans or ex-Holdemans listening to this
Hmm.
and they hear me say, oh, it's a cult, they
Right.
immediately want to tune out everything else. So
Hmm.
consciously or subconsciously. And so I
Interesting.
kind of tread softly there,
Yeah.
because I want people to see that I'm coming from a place of love and forgiveness and
Mhm.
healing.
Yeah.
And so I don't, definitely very high control, right?
Interesting. Yeah.
Um, I grew up learning or being told
Mm.
that Muslims, Buddhists are
Mhm.
evil,
Mm.
right? I got
Mm.
I got told a while ago from a sibling, who I don't talk to that much, that Reiki and yoga were tenets of the devil.
Mm.
Well, I'm a Reiki practitioner.
Yeah.
I go to yoga. I can
Yeah.
tell you that's the furthest thing from the truth.
Yeah.
But that's um, that fear indoctrination
Yeah.
keeps you in that church, and it keeps your thinking very narrow.
Yeah.
So you don't explore what's outside. Some of the
Right.
most
Okay.
amazing people I've met
Yeah.
are Muslim or yogis, right?
Yeah.
When I was in law enforcement, I had an opportunity to deal with some people that were Hindus. I
Yeah.
have never ran into a group of such cheerful people in my life.
Yeah.
And they weren't trying to, manipulate me in any way. They were legitimately all a bunch of happy people.
Mm.
So they're doing something right,
Yeah.
and so
Mm.
I do think that the Holdeman Mennonites do want you to believe
Mm.
and stay in your lane of thinking,
Right.
because to get out of that lane might mean that you leave,
Right.
right? And so
Yeah.
that's also why you go to grade 9.
Mm.
I I can't think of any other reason why you would only go to grade 9 than to keep people low, keep them in the community,
Mm.
because I was always told it was to make sure you stayed humble. Well,
Interesting.
grade 9, that's not even letting you grow to the stage of humility. You're downtrodden,
Wow.
right? Because you can't
Yeah.
get that many jobs at a grade 9 education
Yeah.
unless you work for another Mennonite, which who's going to pay you less than you're worth,
Yeah.
because that's what a lot of them like to do from my experience.
Mhm.
They make more money, and
Mm.
you're just another, you know, minion in the church.
Yeah.
One of the things that going to church never sat with me. Like I never felt comfortable really in church. As a young child, I remember being quite charismatic and having a lot of kids around me, a lot of boys around me. And then somewhere, and I believe probably after my sexual assault, which we'll get into later, or sexual assaults, but church became an unsafe place for me. And every time after I went to church, I almost felt sick. And I started realizing, much later in life, that it was most likely the energy. There was energy I was picking up. So when I was 11, my parents moved across Canada to the East Coast to a province called Nova Scotia, a very small congregation there. And by small congregation, I mean maybe in the vicinity of 30 members. So like 15 households, maybe less, maybe more. And when I was about 13, so moving to a small congregation like that, there were less friends available for me. And I really didn't like the church anyway. And so I started hanging out with the neighborhood kids, which was way more fun. And our family was very dysfunctional because of everything going on at home. And going into a community that didn't know anything about us, didn't help our cause or didn't help my cause to have any friends. When I was 13, I stopped going to church. And in typical 13-year-old fashion, I just said, I don't want to go to church. And as you can imagine, that didn't go over very well. So my dad tried forcing me into the van a couple of times, full on wrestling matches, trying to get me into the van. And I understand his fear because in those type of communities, fitting in, compliance to the church is everything. And so if you have a son that's not going to church, you are not right with God. Right. And so that's an issue for them. So I realized, sorry.
I was just like, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I realized pretty quickly, though, that if I just locked myself in my room and said I was sick, there's nothing they could do.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's what I did.
Mm.
And I think that probably gave them an out as well.
Mm.
I don't know. I've never asked. By that time, 13, 14, I had smuggled in a Walkman and would barter with the neighborhood kids to get tapes, cassette tapes to listen to music. And I would just listen to music, or I would tune into a radio station. I would listen to hockey games and know nothing about these hockey teams, but it was just a connection to the outside world.
Yeah, I hear you basically saying like you really were fully isolated within that community from any type like sports, like
Yeah.
anything.
I love sports.
You were catching on to. I mean, that's you were young, really exploring options beyond the community already. That's just interesting.
And now that I think about it, it goes back to the strength of that young boy.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
quite frankly, I believe my soul knew that I wasn't supposed to be there very long.
Yeah.
Go in, have some experiences that so-called traumatize you, learn from those experiences, heal from those experiences, and help other people.
Yeah.
And so, I was asked recently, are you a survivor or thriver? And I'm like, I'm a man that's had a lot of experiences, and I learned from them and I healed from them. What does that make me? I don't know, right? Something I find humorous.
Yeah.
So when I was 14, we were in that church in Nova Scotia. And I don't know if the church you grew up in did the same thing, but they would have revival meetings every winter, usually for every night for 2 weeks. Like, oh my God, if you don't go to church enough, you got to go so much. So every night for 2 weeks, usually
2 weeks.
Usually 2 weeks.
No kidding.
I've heard of stories as long as 3.
Oh my
If the
God.
revival preachers don't think your congregation's in line enough, they'll keep going. Anyway.
Oh, okay.
So, somewhere during that 2 weeks, usually near the end, they would have an invitation.
Okay.
Right. So at the end of the church service, they would and it always started. I now that I think about it, I wonder if they pre-planned it. They had to have pre-planned it, like, because it was usually one of the song leaders or preachers who would pick the song, and it'd be, a compelling Christian hymn, whatever it might be. And I don't remember any from back then, but like, I don't know, Come to Jesus or whatever, right? And then before you started singing the last verse, a preacher would stand up and say, I invite anybody that wants to serve God to show your commitment by standing up. And this put all the young kids like me, especially ones that didn't want to join the church, in an untenable situation. Because if I stood, there was a preacher coming over after me.
Dude, I'm getting anxiety because I remember it. Yeah, carry on. We had revivals too,
Yeah.
but not for 3 weeks. It was
Yeah.
1 week.
Oh,
Carry on.
normally it was 2 weeks. So, but
Oh,
just the fact that knowing that this invitation's coming always caused me anxiety.
absolutely.
And so anyway,
The
the preach-
pressure.
yeah. So if you stand, you're getting the preachers on you. Everybody's coming up to you. All the zealots are like, oh man, it's so good that you're going to join the church and stuff, right? If you didn't, they all came after you for the same reason. Or the other, like, when are you going to serve God? So I couldn't win.
Oh,
And so
no.
sometimes I would stand, sometimes I wouldn't, because I just didn't know what to do.
There's just like no out.
You're not winning, right? And usually it was like a game time decision. Like, I don't know if I'm going to stand. Who's standing around me, right? Like, sometimes you wait till the last 10 words, stand up, sit down, right? Like,
Ew,
right.
dude. I'm just feeling this.
Yeah.
Feels good
So-
to kind of get it out,
Right?
honestly, because
Like-
I mean that is totally how it felt.
Oh yeah. And anyway,
You're screwed either way. If you,
Yeah,
if you
you're-
stand, like everyone's coming at you. If you don't get out there looking, I mean,
Yeah,
then what do you
yeah.
do?
And so, anyway, I was 14, and
Yeah.
they had this, like, normally it wasn't so hellfire and brimstone,
Okay.
but they brought in this like stern preacher that was known for hellfire and brimstone. And man, he preached a doozy,
Oh.
and like all hellfire and brimstone.
Oh
And
my-
then they did the invitation, right? But it wasn't who wants to serve God. It was who doesn't want to go to hell.
oh my God.
Stand up.
Are you serious?
And
Oh
I
my
was the only
God.
person in that church that wasn't standing. I remember seeing a lady on the other side of the church in a walker
I'm
or
sorry.
like some kind of mobility device, and she managed to get up with her chair, but I wasn't standing, and I was in the back row. And
You were just being freaking authentic.
yeah, the strength of that boy,
The strength.
right?
Like I just really want to sit with that for a second because like that really
I
touches
do
me.
too,
Knowing
'cause-
how the mind control of these groups are, like the strength that took.
it's ironic to me that I could stand like that and have so much authenticity as a 14-year-old,
That's
right?
cool,
And I never really caved to peer pressure,
yeah, that's what stood out to me.
right? But my whole life, I begged for love from women and just treat me right. Right? Like it's such a it's such a dichotomy. Like it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But then I trace that back to my mom.
Yeah.
Right? And
Your
so when it
primary
comes to the
source of nurture was
feminine,
not there.
100%. And so
Hmm.
I was in the back row and I thought I might have escaped. Right? My dad was sitting somewhere in front of me. Right? Everybody's standing in front of me. You can't see me. So after the service lets out, I go to the back where all the boys are my age. And man, within minutes, like a couple of minutes, the local preacher is there. And he's Laverne, you didn't stand.
Go.
What are you going to do if the world ends tonight? What are you going to do if you die in your sleep tonight? And I just shrugged my shoulders. And now I want to swear at him,
Oh,
What the
I was
fuck
just
are you
feeling
thinking?
anger.
right? If anybody came up to one of my kids and asked them, what if you die tonight?
The audacity.
I'm going to kick your ass,
Yeah.
right? And like, but that was normal. It's no wonder I got diagnosed with anxiety. It's no wonder. I remember after my divorce, I was 40 years old, and I had been in therapy for my workplace trauma and all that other stuff.
Sure.
And I decided, my ex-wife told me all the time, "Oh, you're so damaged, you're so damaged, you're so damaged," which wasn't necessarily a lie, right? Just not in the sense she was trying to tell me.
Right.
So I look up a therapist, a psychologist. I wanted to dig up my childhood wounds. And so I go in there, I find one that, childhood development specialist, whatever. So I go in there and I say, I want to dig up all my childhood wounds and figure out like how it's affecting me. And she looked at me like I had a third head. She's like, why would you want to do that? I'm like, because I want to be as healthy as I can.
Hmm.
Right. But she's like, what's bothering you? And I'm like, I don't know, like whatever.
Mhm.
She told me that by far the majority of her clients were Mennonite children from parents who had left the culture. So that's not just Holdeman Mennonite. There's
Sure.
in northern Alberta, there's a lot of other Mennonites,
Sure.
very generally spoken of as Mexican Mennonites.
Okay.
I have no idea their names, whatever. Right. I
There's
just,
just a lot of denominations within
yeah,
Mennonite.
within a few hours drive, there's a lot.
Yeah.
And she told me something. She's like, and this was the first time I realized that everything I experienced as a child was religious abuse. Because growing up, I was terrified of dying or the end of the world. I remember being as early as 10 years old and praying that the world didn't end so I could do some fun thing I had planned in the future. Like, oh my God. So, anyways, this psychologist tells me, she says, no 5-year-old boy or no 5-year-old child should ever worry about death or the end of the world. And I started laughing. And she looks at me and she's like, that's funny. And I'm like, my 5-year-old boy worries about why I might snack on the couch and I won't let him. Right?
Yeah.
That's an age appropriate worry.
Yeah. Isn't it something when you look at your kids and look at the difference? And it's devastating sometimes. Wow.
There's there's been a lot of feeling emotion for me, for the childhood version of me.
Yeah.
Because I look at my kids
Yeah.
and they get to think critically.
Yeah.
They can ask me questions. Dad, why would we have to do that? Oh, that's a good question. Why?
Right. Wow.
Right? And I'm like, you know what? Now that I think about it, you guys don't have to do it that way. Or you don't have to do that. Let's do it this other way.
Hmm.
If I asked my parents a question like that, there was a good chance I would get a beating. And so I have so much gratitude for my kids. Um,
It's just very healing. It's a different lens, but I tell you, it's so touching
yes.
and hard.
Mhm. Allowing or watching your children and parenting them in a way that you didn't get to be parented is healing.
Yeah.
Especially because I have a little boy. Well, he's 9. That is exactly like I was. He does things that I do that when he does them, I remember I wanted to do that, but my parents wouldn't let me.
Sure.
Or I used to do that as a kid. Or I hated those same foods. Like
Interesting.
things that I've never told him that he just picks
Interesting.
up naturally.
Yeah.
He had right now he has really long hair.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful flow.
Yeah.
And so much so at that age it's hard to distinguish. And some people had
Yeah.
called him a girl or thought he was a girl. And I said, listen, buddy, like having the long hair,
Yeah.
society isn't quite prepared for that yet. And
Yeah.
sometimes at your age, it's harder to see. And I'm like, I've mistaken fully grown men for women
Yeah.
with long hair because sometimes we're conditioned to think long hair is automatically a woman.
Right.
But what's so fascinating to me is I never talked to him about that long
Mm.
hair. I always wanted long hair so bad
Yeah.
as a kid. I wanted, for Canadians or hockey fans, I always wanted a hockey mullet. That you have the helmet and the hair sticks out behind. That's
Yeah.
what I wanted.
Right.
And I never got to have that because by the time I got to have it, I was in a job where I needed short hair and I was going bald.
Yeah.
So I never got to have my hockey mullet.
Aw, you're just
Um,
giving him his individuality. It's just, and it seems that he's probably so innocent to what you were burdened by things that I'm sure his
mhm,
world is just fairly
yeah,
innocent too.
yeah. And my daughter, she's 11. We've talked about spirituality a lot, or a bit, I guess, and asked me what I believe. I explained to her what I believe. And she's got this fascination with Greek mythology,
Mm,
which, from the little bit I know, has some spirituality built into it.
mm,
Um, but I just let her, like,
yeah.
I want you to think whatever you want, believe what you want.
Mm,
I want you to change your mind if you see something that's better than that, right?
mm,
And I just want you to be considerate of others, right? And those are not things that I was allowed to do,
yeah.
right? Um, so yeah, there was a lot of that religious abuse um, in the Holdeman Mennonites, and I suspect your denomination was similar. You're expected to give your heart to God and join the church at a very early age.
Okay.
And starting around 10 or 11,
Mm,
you start getting asked questions. And a lot of the time, it's not about when you're going to give your heart to God or when you're going to serve God. It's about joining the church.
okay.
And people's words are very telling. And it's more important to join the church than to live a good life,
Okay.
looking in hindsight, right?
Sure. Absolutely.
And so I knew I was never going to join.
Mm,
Like I made that decision when I was 8 and I was standing by it. So I had to duck and hide. And I did a lot of um, pre-planning my exits and stuff out of church.
mm,
If during revivals, like I would get out of the building as fast as I could. And I would try to go out in the parking lot with other boys because generally speaking, the preachers wouldn't go out in the parking lot after a group of, 10, 12-year-old boys.
okay.
But I did a lot of hiding, and you start knowing who's safe and who's not with, as you start working summer jobs and stuff like that. And I remember working a summer job and I had to get a ride with this guy who was known as a zealot. And I just remember being so uncomfortable riding with him in this truck. And I was like, oh, anytime. And sure enough, so have you thought about your salvation? Every time. And you're tense, you're tense. And then, you know, I can't even remember the answers I used to give. But I'd be like, yeah, yeah, whatever. Right. And all not being allowed to be authentic. Right. And
Like the way you described that, like I just felt it in my chest. Like that was a form of like you're it's like an invasive I feel like the way the verbal and spiritual pressure was put on with those unwanted conversations and questions, like that hurt. Would you call that like verbal spiritual harassment to a degree? Like you were pinned against his projected words, like that just that's
well,
a lot.
it fits very clearly into the term religious abuse.
Right.
And in Canada, an assault is any unwanted touching,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
And so that's unwanted pressure, right?
That's a good term for
It's
that. Yeah.
you know, for example,
Hard to
sexual
put to words sometimes.
if if a man coerces a woman into sex,
Mm.
that's a sexual assault if she
Yeah.
doesn't get to use her free will, right?
Right.
And so whatever that is,
Right.
that's abuse. 100%. Whether
Absolutely.
it's spiritual, religious, whatever you want to call it,
Yes.
just basically under the umbrella of emotional abuse,
Emotional and spiritual combined with that.
right?
In the
Um,
yeah.
when I was 40, I was in a store and I was walking along and I saw a man from my childhood He's probably 7, 8 years older than me.
Mhm.
I had worked with him at a summer job when I was 16 or 15, and I got along with him. Hadn't seen him in, 30 years.
Mhm.
So here I am walking along. I'm 42-ish,
Mhm.
confident, you know, self-assured person. I see him and boom, I'm hiding behind this big sign in the discount aisle. And I'm like, what am I doing behind this sign? Like, what's actually going on here?
Right.
And so I sat there and I'm like, all right, do I walk by and risk that he recognizes me? Do I want to talk to him? Nope, don't really want to talk to him. Okay, I'm going to go around and bypass the store, walk around the store, and left. And I was talking to my psychologist about it, and I'm like, I don't understand what happened. She's like, it's trauma. It was instinctive, right? I I didn't get to look at him and make a decision what happened. I hid. My body hid,
It's incredible.
and then I made the decision. And that's when I started to realize how deeply that religious trauma had gone.
Wow.
It just
What
goes,
an example of that.
yeah,
Like, it just I don't know, it just really that's such a good example of the impact
yeah,
and how it
yeah.
comes out. Like, our bodies naturally just instinctively protect us.
The body remembers the score.
Yeah.
Or the body keeps the score,
Yeah.
like the book.
Yeah.
Um,
Wow.
one of the things that really affected me was I used to have nightmares all the time.
Mm.
And they were closely tied to the church or death and dying,
Mm.
right? And they spoke openly about it. I remember hearing stories in Sunday school, but it was reframed as God calling you. Man, God is love. God doesn't use nightmares to entice you into worshiping God. I spent 19
So
years.
complex. Yeah.
I spent 19 years in public safety, and I had 2 nightmares related to work. One was of abandonment at work,
Mhm.
which boom, straight back to my childhood,
Yeah.
because we're going to talk about some of that abandonment.
Yes.
And the other one was my partner dying in the line of duty, which is apparently quite a common dream for law enforcement to have, right?
Mm.
Being helpless.
Yeah.
Well, your partner dies.
Yeah.
So
Mm.
my question would be,
Mhm.
is how can I spend 19 years watching or seeing or witnessing trauma every day and have 2 nightmares? But my childhood just packed me full of nightmares,
This is very,
right?
very, very fascinating. Yeah,
There's something happening.
absolutely.
And, like I said, I used to be terrified of dying, terrified of the end of the world.
Yeah.
Um, when I was,
Religious abuse 101.
yeah,
That, yeah.
you should never be thinking about that. And you know what? Not even religious, but if you have to use fear
Hmm.
to entice someone to do something,
Okay.
you're manipulating them.
Yeah.
If you have to use fear, what you have is not that great,
This
right?
is so good.
Because if some guy out in the street comes up to me and intimidates me and says, I'm going to do this or this, whatever, I'm not buying that. Like, never.
Hmm.
So that fear followed me for a long time. Probably, well, the longer I stayed away from the Holdeman church, the less nightmares I had.
Hmm.
Um, and actually, I want to go back to the whole energy piece.
Yeah, you mentioned about church and just
Because,
the
yeah,
light. Yeah.
so I always kind of felt like almost sick
Mhm.
after church. In my early 40s, I started dating a lady who's Christian and
Mhm.
wanted to go to church. And so I went to her church a couple times. I warned her right off the bat, listen, I'm not going to church all the time.
Yeah.
But I went a couple of times and I never had that feeling
Interesting.
ever. Then in
Mm. You anticipated it, huh?
I wasn't sure,
Yeah.
right? I wasn't sure
Yeah.
if I would or not.
Yeah.
And then a couple of years ago, I'm an advocate for mental health and sexual abuse, especially in men,
Mm.
because of my
Mm.
background, my history.
Yeah.
And so I decided I needed to do something to raise awareness about how prolific the sexual abuse was
Okay.
in the Holdeman church and in my congregation.
Okay.
And so I contacted a lawyer thinking that maybe getting a class action lawsuit would be the best way. And I've since realized that it's not. Coming from a place of love and forgiveness with a hope of healing
Mm.
and maybe education is going to be way more effective than just suing them,
Okay.
right? So I'd reached out to a lawyer. I was talking to him about it, and I filled out a big a package, and I went into intimate detail about my sexual abuse. And I began to feel the same energy that I felt every time I went to church.
Mm.
And so that's very telling. There's a connection there.
Yeah.
With my music tastes, I always used to love the singing. I thought it was so great.
Mm.
Um, so like a couple months ago, very recently, I YouTubed like Holdeman Mennonite singing because I wanted to see. And there's videos of them singing. And I couldn't stand it. I couldn't stand it. And I got that same feeling of energy throughout my body.
Yeah.
And as I paid attention, it seems so forced, right? And like I've seen people sing.
Sure.
I know a man who sings and he sings the anthem at hockey games. And man, he just gets right into it. He loves it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have never seen that same passion for the singing
Yeah.
in a Holdeman church.
Yeah.
Never.
I really relate to what you shared about the way it makes you feel sick. I feel physically sick when I hear any familiar hymn to the communities I came from. It just has to do with the abuse that is associated with those years, and I I love music. I love music,
Mm-hmm.
but it fascinates me how that
Mm-hmm.
the authentic but versus what do you call
Yeah.
the singing that we came from, it just
Right?
it's associated with the entire pro programming,
Yeah. 100%. And if you watch these videos, and I have no idea if they know they're being recorded or not, but regardless, I think
Right?
back to my childhood and I see it's all a show,
Yeah.
right? You can see how they sing and some of them close their eyes, but it's not authentic,
Yeah.
but they're trying to make it look like, oh, they're so into this,
Yeah.
right? And it's not. It's a very much a status thing if you're a good singer or not,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I never joined the youth. I
Mm.
was never allowed to because I never joined the church. I ran away when I was 16. I'm like, I'm out.
Okay.
Right? So
Yeah.
I guess that's another important step of the story. Stopped going to church when I was 13 for the most part.
Okay.
Sometimes I would go, which now brings to mind like why was I in church at a revival meeting when I was 14?
Mm.
Right? Like something obviously there was
Mm.
pressure or something there. I don't know.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So we were on the other side of the country and I missed all my friends.
Mm.
So this is early mid 90s. And occasionally we would be able to talk on the phone, right? But that was it. Like
Mm.
I missed a lot of my friends. And so I started asking my dad, I'm like, I want to go back. Ask one of my uncles if I can come live with them. And so one of my uncles agreed that I could come stay with them. Um, I realized later, it took a while, but I realized during my stay with them that they thought I was being sent because they thought I was being a problem child and my parents sent me to live with them
Mm.
to try to correct me.
Mm.
I'm like, no, I begged to come here. Like I wanted to come, right? So, but it's also my dad protecting the narrative. And I can't blame him because who wants to say my son hates home life so much
Mm.
that he wants to leave. So I came back. I did my grade 9 year back in Crooked Creek.
Mm.
And of course, then I was almost, yeah, I was 16 when grade 9 ended because I'd started school a year late.
Mm.
And then, yeah, um, my brother, who was excommunicated from the church, who's 18 months older than me, he he came back as well. He was living in the area. And so one night when everybody was at a church service, I just packed up all my stuff. I left a note on the counter, said, I'm out. And I walked away
Good for you.
and I never looked back. I went back to church a couple of times, but I haven't been back. I think the last time I was in a Holdeman church was when I was 20
Mm.
for a funeral, so
Okay.
26 years ago. And
Mm.
I know eventually I'll be expected to go back, for a parent's funeral, but
Right.
I don't really want to go.
Absolutely.
But then again, the more I heal, the more I get comfortable with that stuff.
Right.
Maybe it probably would affect me less. But it's not something I ever feel like I want to do.
Right.
Um,
Absolutely.
it's another funny story though. Like my brother got kicked out of the Holdeman church for something I did,
Mm.
and he was so far gone at that point. He was like, "Whatever, I
Mm.
don't care." I'm like, "Why didn't you tell them?" He's like, "Because I don't care."
Mm.
Right? Um, we were playing hockey with some neighbor kids on an outdoor pond, and something happened. I think there was an argument or something. So as we left, I leaned out the window and started swearing at some people and calling them a bunch of names. A few nights later, the preacher showed up, and how they heard about it, like, which is interesting in its own right because they rely so much on gossip,
Yeah.
right?
I know these patterns too well.
Yeah. They rely so much on gossip and social control.
Right.
And they said,
Social control is an interesting way to say that. Yeah.
that's what it is.
Yeah.
Peer pressure, social control. Like,
Yeah.
you better look and act the same as everybody else. So they showed up, and I guess they said, well, you did this, and that's unbecoming. He's like, okay. And then I found out like months later, he's like, yeah,
Hmm.
they blamed me for you swearing, and I just took it. Right. So, but living with my uncle and aunt and well, at that time it was just daughters. They have one son who was long gone and married.
Mm.
Really gave me insight into it was what was possible. It was the first time as a child that I was in a safe environment. And it wasn't totally safe
Mm.
because there was always that pressure of like, when are they going to ask me about my salvation?
Mm.
And I don't know that they ever did.
Mm.
Like I'm pretty sure my uncle did a couple times, but very delicately, right? But it was the first time I was, the safest I'd been since I'd been born. And I appreciate that.
Interesting.
And one of my cousins has reached out to me, and um, she and her husband left the church many, many years ago. And she's heard my story on other podcasts, and she's reached out to me and said, I'm so sorry. We had no idea.
Mm.
And I'm like, no, like, you had no idea. That's exactly it. Like, how were you supposed to know?
So tell me a little bit more what your home life looked like growing up.
It was very chaotic. It was very loud. From my earliest memories are being screamed at, just full on anger. I don't remember any affection from my mom.
Mm.
There was, she used to do this thing when we were young where if we were sick, she'd put us over her knee and she would thump our backs. And I loved that. And it would, I don't know, loosen phlegm or whatever. And I remember
Mm.
asking her many times, like, hey, can you do that thing? And when I wasn't sick, and I realized later in life, I was just wanting connection. I wanted some affection from my mom. And that's the closest I ever got. It's the closest I ever got. When I was, well, 2 years ago, I met a man that's 18 years older than me,
Mhm.
grew up in the same congregation, took the same life path that I did. He went into law enforcement, got diagnosed with PTSD, and he's off work. And he told me, he said, I'm not sure if I should tell you this, but when I was growing up and I was a teen, we hated your mom.
Mm.
And I was like, really? Why? And he's like, she used to beat her babies. And I'm like, okay, define beat here. Because in that culture, it's believed that you need to break the spirit of the child. And so it's not unusual for babies to get spanked for crying. Babies getting spanked for seeking natural connection with their caregiver, and you're going to whip them. Okay? Like, no thanks. Anyway, that church breaks natural instinct out of parents. Anyway, my mom used to beat us. And I asked him, I'm like spanking? And he's like, no, beating her babies. And I'm like, okay, describe baby. What does a baby mean to you in this? And he's like, less than a year old. As far as I know, nobody stepped in to stop it. Right. I always knew that there was a lot of pre-verbal abuse in my life, and that validated it.
Yeah, I believe
Um,
that.
I was always the scapegoated child, and I often wondered how deep that went, how early that went, because later in life, I started studying personalities a lot, and I understood that when there's a very empathic child, if there's a so-called, so let's just say narcissistic parent,
Mhm.
that empathic child will ignite rage in the parent. And that's exactly what I lived through. So I was always curious how far back that went. And last year, there was a measles outbreak where I live. And I was like, oh, I'm curious. I was always picked on. So I phoned the health unit and I said, hey, like I want to check, make sure I have my measles vaccine. They said, nope, you don't have it. I'm like, really? Like, and they're like, no, we have no vaccines for you. And I'm like, interesting. And so she said, we'll go get the paper file out of Edmonton, like the capital of Alberta. We'll go back and see what you have. And I had nothing. So I put that in the chat with our family chat. And a bunch of my other siblings were, oh yeah, I had checked. I have my measles vaccine. And so my mom gets in there and she says, oh, they had eradicated it by the time you were born, so that's why we didn't get you. Well, I didn't have my polio vaccine either, right? And so it just shows how manipulative and conniving, but it shows you how far it goes back.
Wow.
She knew, like, when I was born, that she didn't like me or whatever it is, right? Like, it's crazy to think that, you know, a mom would do that, especially because we put society puts moms on pedestals, and absolutely good moms need to be put on pedestals, right? Nurturing, caring, we need that so bad. I didn't have that. Um, I used to get beatings a lot for things that my siblings had done, and I would be picked out to do it. I got beatings for things I didn't do. I got beatings for things that my siblings wouldn't get punished for, but I would get punished for it. And so I was so confused as a kid. So confused. I never knew what to expect. My mom used to accuse me of lying all the time. Anything would happen. You're lying. You lie like a sidewalk. That was her phrase. You lie like a sidewalk. And my dad believed it. And then I would be punished for it. I remember one day when I was 9 or 10, um, something had happened at school, the Holdeman school. And a friend of mine who was a year or a grade below me had got punished for it because he did it and got sent home from school. So I get home from school and my mom comes up to me and says, you did this thing at school today. I said, no, I didn't. She said, yeah, you did. So and so down the road called and said you did this. And so and so down the road was a nosy body who got involved in everything. And probably very similar to my mom. right? Probably knowing that I would get a whipping, taking some kind of satisfaction in that. So I told my mom, I said, phone the school, phone my buddy's parents. They'll tell you. I didn't do it. I wasn't involved. He got sent home from school. She didn't. So she convinced my dad. She said, Laverne did this at school, and now he's lying about it. And so um, this could be triggering for somebody watching. So, be gentle. There was a chair. I had a chair in my bedroom sitting there like this, but it had metal arms that came up like this. And so my parents slid me through it so I couldn't move, and they whipped me. And I think about it now, it's like putting a cow in a cattle chute and squeezing it so the cow can't move so you can brand it or give it a shot, whatever. So I would, treated less than human. And my dad would whip me. And then every so often they would stop and, are you sorry? I didn't do it. So I never apologized. The strength of that little kid, the strength of that little boy.
I don't have any words.
But what strikes me the most about that was my mom stood there with her arms crossed and a little smirk of satisfaction on her face.
That's evil.
That's evil. That's cruel.
As a mother, I don't understand. That's so inhumane.
If someone even touches one of my kids,
God.
even suspected as inappropriately or whatever, I'm kicking the shit out of them.
Yeah.
Like, don't.
They need to see that. They
Right?
need to see protection.
Yes.
And you just shared what
And
was that's dark.
it's cruel. And it's very dark.
You're supposed to be protected.
Yeah.
God.
And that one incident sticks out as a stark reminder of how I never experienced nurture. I never experienced. And with everything else in my life, being 4 years old, begging my mom not to take me to church, dressed up as like this weirdo in girls' leotards. I've been begging not only for love, but acceptance and to be treated normally by people my whole life.
Yeah.
Right? And unless you've experienced cruelty like that and acknowledged it for what it's for, because that's hard, right? And we inherently love our parents, right? I loved my mom and she was incredibly cruel to me.
That's the complex part.
Right? And so trying to dissect that when you're older and you realize, wait a minute, none of that's love.
Yeah.
That's pure evil. That's cruel, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. It's sadism.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it is.
My mom took pleasure in watching me suffer. Right? Watching me suffer dressed up, going to church. Watching me suffer not getting eating hot dogs. Watching me suffer not getting to go to school. Right? Watching me suffer at the hand of my dad, who I've found forgiveness for. And I've found forgiveness from my mom. That's a good story in itself. But the way I look at it is, if a snake bites you, you don't hate the snake. It's just doing snake things. But you don't go where there's snakes, right? And so I don't go hang out with my mom a lot, right? I read a book a while ago called There's a Hole in My Love Cup. And in there, he has an exercise on forgiveness. And you picture the other person in front of you and you picture them in the trauma they've experienced. And I can't even remember everything. And I was listening to it as I was driving. So I didn't even do it like properly. until I was 42 years old, if my mom touched me, like put a hand on my arm, anything like that, my body would shudder uncontrollably, involuntarily. I did that exercise and I was at my parents' house a few weeks later. And my mom said, "Let me give you a hug." And so I'll play. And I let her hug me. My body didn't shudder. So forgiveness is not for her. It's for me. It's releasing the toxins. My mom doesn't even think she did anything wrong. She told me recently or a couple years ago that if you wouldn't have been such a difficult child, I would have been a better mom. That's not the way it works, right? Children react to what's in their environment, right? It's but she's never going to take accountability for anything. And I wrote a letter to my dad a few years ago, which I'll get into because there's more I want to talk about first. But my sister wrote a letter to my parents recently, one of my sisters. And I said, before she sent it, I'm like, that she sent it to me and asked me what I thought. I said, it's very nice. But mom's not going to take it. And she's like, yeah, I know, but I got to do it. And sometimes I think it is important to do something like that because you get it out of your system.
For yourself.
Yeah. And then you get the validation that they're never going to change.
Wow,
Right.
Laverne.
So
I feel that this is for us, so we can carry
yes.
on.
Yes.
Wow,
It's so we can release that. And
that is so
of
profound.
of all the hundreds of times that I've, tapped into my inner child pain and released some emotion, I feel joy. I feel lighter every single time afterwards. And so I don't give a shit about what they say. It's for me. Right. And they don't think they need it. So why would you tell them? Right? You keep that to yourself. Well, no, heal out loud. Heal out loud so other people, right?
I love it.
That's what we're
though.
doing
I
here.
get
Right?
you. I'm totally
Yeah.
with you on that.
Yeah.
Like I hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
this is so good.
going from a spot where I couldn't even let my mom touch me as an adult,
Yeah.
strong, confident man.
Yeah.
My mom touched me, boom.
Absolutely.
Like a cold shiver would go through me.
Absolutely.
And now I can sit and I can have a conversation with her. I observe her, right? And I call her out on her shit, right?
I love it.
Actually, I'm getting warmed up now, so I swear a little bit. Is that okay?
I'm
All right.
okay. Authenticity is what I value.
All right, good. Because I love me some F-bombs sometimes. But I have 8 siblings.
Yeah.
And a dad.
Yeah.
And they're still conditioned not to rock the boat.
Yeah.
Last summer, I was at a fire at my brother's place. And I had a brother there, I think 2 sisters, and my mom and dad were there. And my sister asks, and she had this look in her face like she knew what was coming. She poking the bear. She looks at me and she's like, I wonder what our parents taught us. And I'm like, oh, here we go. So I'm like, well, I learned to lie. I learned to lie to protect myself.
Yeah. Sure.
And my mom, in her sweetest fake voice, looks over at my sister and, oh, not in a million years would I have thought one of my kids would lie to me. And I just, I piped up, and that's really funny because you used to accuse me of lying all the time. And as soon as I said that, my dad and my brother jumped up and walked away because they know the boat's being rocked and they don't want to have any part to do with it.
Wow.
Conditioned, right?
Absolutely.
And the silence only serves abusers. Wow. And yes, moms can be abusers.
That's right.
Right? There are many, many men that do horrible things. Some women do as well. Yeah. And it's hidden, and it's really hidden, I think, in plain societies.
Yes.
Because women take a back seat to everything. And I think they can just do whatever they want in the background. If they're so inclined.
Yeah.
And,
No,
and-
I've experienced that pattern.
Yeah.
There's not accountability
No.
for that.
And by women, I'm not painting everybody with a brush.
Sure.
But just in psychology and the world at large, there's a certain percentage of people that are going to be prone to violence.
Yeah.
I read a book recently where it's called Poisonous People.
Mm.
And whether they're, psychopaths or antisocial or narcissistic, whatever,
Mhm.
they all kind of meet at this juncture of antagonistic, callous,
Mhm.
and sadistic. And, they can hide that very well.
Yeah.
But I would definitely put
What about in religion then, right?
right? And
I feel like that's where it I don't know.
it I find it's very well hidden,
Yeah.
right?
It's complex.
Once I kind of went through my own experiences and started researching it, I can look back in hindsight
Mhm.
and I'm like, oh, that person, right? Danger.
Yeah.
But when it's all and their behavior is exactly what you're experiencing within the church culture from the
Okay.
church,
Okay.
there's nothing wrong.
What can you compare it to?
So I would say,
Wow.
let's go. Yeah, you can't compare it to anything because you don't know any different, right? So if you, let's say, have a parent who's uses coercive control and is violent, even in regular society, you don't often, as a child, see that or make the comparison until you spend a lot of time at, like, say, a friend's house who has two loving parents. And then you're like, wait a minute, like, he's not getting beaten or he's not scared of his mom or his dad. Why am I? Right. And then you start to make comparisons.
Yeah.
And then it's so complex because this is someone you inherently love so much. So why are you going to, like, it's hard, right? Even when you see it, your body doesn't want you to see it. Or I think sometimes your body knows first. And then your mind has to catch up and say, you know what? Like, I had a violent parent, and that's not love. That's not what love looks like. And then to get that to train your nervous system, that's not what love looks like. Like, hello. I, I'm at 46 years and I'm not sure I'm there yet.
Trust me. That nervous system stuff, we would need 2 more episodes on.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, good
So,
conditioning.
um,
Wow.
and this is actually a good transition to my sexual abuse.
Okay.
So there's a lot of, I believe, the church is coercively controlling because you don't have true free will, right? Everything is driven by fear of hell, a fear of dying, a fear of the end of the world. And then there's a fear of not fitting in, right? The social control. And so everything is coercive control. So predators use coercive control. Not everyone who uses coercive control is necessarily a predator in a sexual way.
Mhm.
I do believe that if you are truly pathological using coercive control, you're a predator. And I know that because I was hunted out, if I want to use that term, by women to date because I was an easy target. I would do whatever they wanted. And in hindsight, I was like, oh man, you manipulated me a lot. So growing up, probably as early as 8 years old, and I have a hard time pinning ages to things because my childhood was so confusing.
Sure.
I started hearing from my friend group that a certain somebody who was a teenager, I think he was about 15 years old, was sexually abusing boys in his home. And they said, don't go to so and so's house because he's going to do this to you if you go there. And so we would always have these discussions. And I remember always saying, hey, did you tell your dad? Did you talk to your? Yes, yes. And then invariably, another boy would eventually pipe up. Yeah, we went there last week and, he did his thing to me. Well, did you tell your parents? Yeah. Like, and it was just going on and on in this circle. And so I remember one day my mom says, we're going to go to this place for Sunday dinner next Sunday. And I'm like, I wonder. But at that young age, there's no comprehension of really anything. And so this guy also had a younger brother that was my older brother's age. So they were close. They would play together. So after dinner, the lady of the house goes, "Why didn't you boys go upstairs and play?" So we ended up going upstairs, and what happened happened. I'm not going to get into that. That's not really important. And at 8 years old, I didn't have the power to tell my parents what happened. I was too scared.
Sure.
That's terrifying. That's as a parent now, that's terrifying to me. I want to be able to be connected to my children and have that. And if anything, God forbid, happened to my kids, I would want them to be able to tell me.
Right.
But I couldn't tell my parents.
Mhm.
So I told my older brother. And my older brother was the golden child.
Okay.
So he had a completely different relationship. And he told my dad. And my dad came and talked to me. And I, vividly remember where we were. We were in the barn, and he's kneeling down beside me, and he said, something happened. And I told him, and I asked him, I said, shouldn't we be calling the police? Like, isn't this wrong? Like, this doesn't feel right. And he said, no, we always let the church deal with this. And like I said, the church breaks the natural instinct of parents. I can't imagine something happening to my boy and telling him that, right?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's not okay.
No. Um, from that point on, I had a lot of anger towards the church because they let it happen to me. And anger is a healthy emotion. So I'm going to Kleenex.
Sure. Thank you.
Anger is a healthy emotion. And one of the things that the Holdeman Mennonites would always say is, you're so bitter. You're offended. Offended. Well, if you look up the definition of offended, it means that something happened to you and your reaction.
Wow. You're natural, healthy, born. You were just in alignment.
Yeah.
And it was called some bullshit.
Yeah.
You're bitter.
But you're also, you're not allowed to listen to your body and what it's telling you.
You're
You don't
taught-
have any autonomy.
No autonomy.
If some guy, okay, rant time. If some guy went up to one of my kids and did anything appropriate, they'd tell him to fuck off. Right?
Yeah.
I didn't have that autonomy. I wasn't allowed to question anything. I wasn't allowed to speak up. Whether it's the church or my home life, I can't say anything. Right?
Preconditioned already.
Yeah. My kids.
That's what sobers me so much.
Yeah. So another one to that is my kids don't have to hug anybody they don't want to hug. And you will ask to hug. You don't say, give me a hug. My mom likes to say, hey, give grandma a hug. Huh, no.
Yeah.
My son, always, no thanks, I'm good.
No.
Right? And I fucking dock him up.
Yeah.
Because it's his body.
Yes.
Right?
Oh, this is good.
I didn't have that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Profound.
Right? something
And
that
what a gift that you're giving your
yeah.
son and your daughter.
and something we didn't have as children.
Yeah.
We didn't have that as adults
Yeah,
because we didn't
exactly.
know, right?
I know.
Um,
Wow.
but back to my mom watching me suffer, right? A few months later, after my parents knew what happened, we're going back to so and so's house for Sunday dinner. And I was filled with fear the week or whatever time frame it was leading up. I was filled with fear because now I knew what was going to happen. And I couldn't believe that my parents would bring me back there. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, you guys know. And you're bringing me back there.
Right.
And so go there for Sunday dinner. After Sunday dinner, lady of the house, why don't you boys go upstairs and play? In those moments, walking up the stairs and the kitchen table, the dining room table was right at the bottom of the stairs. And I can tell you exactly where everyone was sitting at that table. Because I was walking up that stairs and I'm looking back at my parents, just screaming inside, please, please, please do something. You know I can't go up these stairs. Please help me. And neither of my parents looked up. And as I'm walking up those stairs, I'm filled with an icy cold fear throughout my whole body. I'm frozen. And my nervous system, found out later, was frozen in time. 9-year-old Laverne walking up those stairs filled with fear. And the two people in his life who should have cared for him and nurtured him and kept him safe didn't even fucking look up. And that fear has stayed with me at some level for the last 37 years. I was 39 years old before I realized there was any connection to my childhood, to that instant, and to anything that was happening in my life. I have confronted that fear many times, right?
Okay.
It's I'm sure it's there at some level. Here's something. About a month ago,
Yeah.
I did a healing journey.
Yeah.
And I have written a lot of letters to myself. I have, revisited that incident and cried it out.
Yeah.
And I did a medicine journey, and it was so amazing because the facilitator put big sound canceling earphones on,
Okay.
headphones. And then I just laid down and put a weighted blanket over me. And there was a playlist that he has, which was amazing, but I didn't even really know it, or I wasn't really aware of it for most of the session. And so I'd taken the medicine, and I have never felt so loved and safe in my life, ever. And so the medicine takes you where you need to go. Your body knows what needs to be healed.
Yeah.
And it showed me the most amazing love from a woman. I'm like, man, this is amazing, right? And then boom, there's another guy in the picture. And I'm shattered. And as soon as that happened, I felt the same icy fear from when I was 9 years old going up those stairs. But I've done a lot of mindfulness work and meditation, and I'm very in tune with my body. And so I just started breathing through it. And I felt that fear. And then showed me some love again, and then showed me the fear. But next time, so the first time it showed me the fear, my body tensed, my breathing increased. And I asked him about it. And he said, oh, yeah, your heart rate shot up, your blood pressure shot up, everything went up. And, but then it cycled and it cycled and it cycled, the same cycle of love. And then someone else is better than me or more loved than me or whatever. And it got to the point where, I'd be in this love. And then I'd see, oh, another man. And I just started laughing. Well, of course there is. Right? I didn't care. So anyway, when I came out of that session, and since then, I have been forever changed. I'm not scared just to randomly talk to a woman on the street. And there's always been something where the rejection or abandonment from the feminine because of my childhood.
Sure.
Right? And so healing is worth it. It's hard.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of tears.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But
wow.
What's crazy to me.
Claiming back that.
Yeah.
Claiming back.
Yeah. Wow. And I used to be a very joyful person, a joyful child.
Yeah.
And once I realized how much trauma I actually had and how deep it actually went, I always wondered if I would ever be that charismatic person again. Right? Because I can remember, being at church as a young boy and lots of other boys around me. And like, I would be leading the conversation. And, I always said people always followed me just to see what would happen next. Because as a traumatized kid with ADHD, I did a lot of stupid stuff. Right? But after the more I heal, I get back to that joyful, loving person.
Wow.
And the more I heal, the more joyful, loving experiences I have with my kids. Like, we have so much fun together and so much love. Right? And it's just getting rid of all that shit we picked up along the way.
Yeah.
Right? Wow. And it's been a crazy ride for me.
Yeah.
But it's been hard.
Yeah.
I won't lie.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a lot of distaste for all of the sexual abuse that happened in the community I grew up in. So all my friends knew that it was happening. And I reconnected with a childhood friend a few years ago. Hadn't seen him in 30 years. And he said, yeah. He said, I remember you talking about it and telling what happened to you. And then guess what? It happened to me too. And I don't understand. I do kind of understand. And I don't think these plain isolated communities understand the actual damage that sexual assault does to you. There was a lady in northwestern Alberta that was ex-Holdeman, and she was doing advocacy work. And she met a whole family. Every single person in the family had been sexually abused. And the mom said, well, it didn't affect me, so it won't affect my child.
Oh my God.
Like, no.
Jesus.
That's
awful.
At the very least, it's a very, very serious boundary violation. Like, personal boundary violation. But you're not allowed to have boundaries. You're not allowed to have boundaries in a church. I didn't have any. Do you think I could have told my parents or any authority figure, no? No is not allowed. You're not allowed to say that. And so I don't, there's this misunderstanding or lack of understanding of what anything does. There's boundary violations all the time. Like preachers stopping by to give you shit or asking you whether you've given your heart to God. It's a very personal matter.
Yeah.
It is none of your business. I didn't experience it as bad as many other people because I never joined.
Yeah.
So I never got interrogated about my faith. Right? But so at least in the Holdemans, if you want to get baptized and you're a 12-year-old child and you got to go stand in front of these preachers and deacons, and they ask you a bunch of invasive questions. And I know they ask invasive questions because I've heard people tell me. And in a lot of cases, you're being groomed.
Mm.
You're being groomed. Predators rise to positions of power.
Mm.
And what a better way for a predator to be like, oh, this kid doesn't have any boundaries. This kid doesn't have a good home life. I could groom him, right? Or her.
Yeah.
But that invasiveness,
Mhm.
like those boundary violations, that starts that early,
Right.
right? And, I remember being 10 and being questioned about stuff. Well, if I were to join the church at 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, whatever, I'm held to that decision for the rest of my life.
Wow.
In Canada, you're not criminally liable for anything until you're 12 years old. So if an 11-year-old does something criminal, they don't get charged because they're not criminally liable. And then from 12 to 17, there's a very different set of procedures and rules and punishment because you're a child, right? So why would I say I want to serve God because I'm being pressured into it and I've made up this story about how I'm saved, and now you're going to hold me to that for the rest of my life? Why? You should wait until I'm 18, 19, 20 with no coercion.
Mm.
And then, right?
Right.
And the whole
I hear you on that.
point of holding somebody to a decision,
Mm.
that goes against everything life is about. Because you're supposed to evolve.
Mm.
And you can't evolve if you're stuck in this decision.
So what you're saying is the baptism that happened in your church environment was like sealing you to a loyalty that
You're stuck.
is eternal damnation to go
Yeah.
outside that.
Yeah.
And
Uh,
they have you baptized as a child almost.
Yeah. Well,
Before you're old enough to make any informed decision, it's
Yeah.
just it's decided.
Yeah. There are
That's
some.
scary.
And
Yeah.
so
That's sobering.
if, let's just say I'm 14, I have this so-called conversion experience. I go in front of this panel of preachers and deacons and I tell them, and they're like, okay, yeah, this is legit. Let's baptize them. So then they have this baptismal service, and you have to stand in front of the church and say your conversion experience, which is another way to lock you in, right? Because now you've told everybody this happened to me and I am committed.
Wow.
So now I'm locked in,
You are locked in.
right?
Wow.
My predator, the guy that sexually abused me, went and stood up and told his conversion experience. And I'm sitting there going, that's bullshit. That's a lie. That's not true, right? Like I knew. And I'm like, how can they let this guy in there? He's raping little boys. But now he's protected in the church. And every time I go to church, I see him sitting there protected by the church. What do you fucking think that does? That forces people out. And if they're not being forced out of the church, they're being forced to move somewhere else. In my congregation, so I became a sexual abuse advocate, and I talk about it because not enough people talk about sexual abuse,
Right.
and definitely not enough men talk about sexual abuse.
Right.
As I've told my story and talked about it, people have reached out to me. The guy that abused me died in his 40s, early 40s, something like that. But before he died, he told a friend of mine the names of two preachers and two deacons. No, two preachers, a deacon, and a school board member who had abused him. And that was a light bulb for me. I'm like, no wonder they never did anything. No wonder. Because if the police come to him,
Oh my God.
which he ended up going to jail because when I was 18, I'm like, fuck this. And I called the police, I gave a statement, and he ended up going to jail for a while. And somehow Well, actually, so he didn't find out until he was jail. They put him in a rehab program.
Mm.
And that's when he's like, wait a minute, I'm a victim of this too. Right? Like, yeah, and you did a lot of horrible things, but you were a victim too. And he was apparently contemplating like blowing the lid off of this. Anyway, so people have come to me, and I now have the names of 3 preachers, 2 deacons, and a school board member, all from my congregation.
People in power.
People in power
You were a child. Wow.
that were sexually abusing or sexually abused people. And every one of those names I've heard at least twice. And so if I've heard it twice, you can multiply that number by a lot. One person told me, she said, I can't believe this guy was ordained as a minister because he was raping everyone.
It's awful.
Right?
This is super
And
sick.
so,
but it describes these systems.
Yes. And I could be angry about this, and I could say, you guys are all messed up. You're doing this wrong. But I think you have to understand predators. Predators are very charismatic. And not only are they good at grooming their victims, they're good at grooming everybody around them. Right? And so that's why when somebody like a school teacher gets charged of, horrible things, that everybody comes out to defend them. Because, that person would never do this.
No one can believe it. Yep.
Oh, yes, they would.
Wow.
And it also keeps the victim silent too.
Yeah.
Because
especially if one is a preacher of the church.
Right? You're not going to accuse a man of God of evil. Right? I told my dad what I just finished telling you, that I had the names of people. And he froze. And like he was filled with fear. Because it was his nervous system literally couldn't process what I was telling him. But that fear tells me that he knows it's true. Right?
Absolutely.
After I started talking and I started focusing, the conversation around the Holdeman Mennonites, which it's a society issue.
Right.
Right? And we all need to understand predators more, and there's sexual predators everywhere you go, not just in the Holdeman church. But the Holdeman church was my experience, and so I'm passionate about that.
Absolutely.
I'm not pointing fingers at them. Right? I found the name of a Holdeman minister who is outspoken against abuse, sexual abuse. And so all these places, all these churches have their own little books and stuff. So of all the contact information. So I knew where he lived. So I was at my parents'. I'm like, oh, you guys got one of these books. Snapped a picture of his contact information and called him out of the blue. I said, hey, you don't know me? I'm not even a Mennonite. I grew up Mennonite. I hear you're passionate about sexual abuse. And he's like, I can't talk right now, but I'll call you back. And he called me back. And so we had 3 or 4 really long conversations. And I'm like, how can we help? Like, how can we change this? And I have something going for me where I was never baptized into the Holdeman church. So if you're baptized in, you're shunned. If you leave, then you're shunned, right? You can't do business with you. They can't shake your hand. You can't eat at the same table. Like, you're less than human.
That is just,
which is a form of bullying. Exclusion is a form of bullying. So that's all it is bullying. And
right.
So apparently when they excommunicate you, they say something to the effect of, we now turn your soul over to the devil, which is a curse. Okay, so you're cursing somebody. God would never curse anybody. Anyway, so I've never experienced it.
Our mind is spinning.
Yeah, I've never experienced it, so I've just heard other people say that. Anyway, because I've never joined the church, they could work with me. Right? And I have my experience in law enforcement. I have, I grew up Holdeman, so I think that I'm in a good spot to help Holdemans.
So tell me what your relationship looked like with your dad.
Well, for many years, I had a lot of resentment towards him. And looking back into my childhood, I could remember a few moments of softness from him. And I knew that he loved me, but somewhere along the line, I lost that feeling. And I didn't feel loved from him for most of my life.
Mm.
But I would always go back to my childhood. I'm like, man, there was a couple of times like I think my dad actually loved me. Later in life, when I started realizing some of the relationships I'd been in and how I'd been manipulated, I began to see how my dad had been manipulated and still is. Because of course there's no divorce. Once you get married, you're in it for until life or death or severe abuse. Like not even severe abuse
Right.
is an excuse to leave a marriage. Anyway, I began to see how my dad could have easily been manipulated, and I began to have more grace for him.
Mm.
And my dad grew up in the 50s, 60s in a very, rural area. He's he's not a dumb person, but he's unsophisticated. And especially being in that culture, like you don't there's no awareness of like literally anything.
Yeah.
And so my dad was an easy target,
Mm.
right? Um and so he was manipulated into being my mom's weapon.
Mm.
And I still don't fully understand that because I don't care how hot of a woman or how much money she has, she could ever convince me to do anything like that to my kids. Right? Like I don't understand that depth,
Yeah.
but I know my dad experienced violence in his own childhood. And so like it's normal.
Yeah.
Like spankings are very and I don't even want to call them spankings. They're whippings and they're beatings.
Yes.
Like they're
The religion
assaults,
calls them
they're
spankings.
abuse,
Yeah.
right? Like I can't even I never have been able to spank my kids because it just felt wrong. You're not supposed to hit another person, especially a child. It felt wrong in my body. Like even give a little slap on the bum. Like it just felt wrong. I'm like, there has to be a better way. Anyway, so I could see how my dad had been manipulated. And I have been manipulated. I have been gaslit into oblivion, believing things about myself that weren't true. So I could understand my dad. A few years ago, I typed out a letter to him. And it was, I think, 5 or 6 pages long, typed. So there was a lot of stuff there. And I told him, I started the letter by saying how much I was coming from a place of love, forgiveness, and having healed a lot of the abuse or a lot of my experiences. And I wanted to read it to him. And I thought my dad would probably take it because he has changed a lot over the years, but I was still scared. I was still scared. It took me 3 attempts. So we met for coffee one day. I said, "Hey, I got a letter I want to read you." And I wrote it. I read it to him.
Mm.
And when I finished, he said, "That's all true. Thanks for that." And then he said, "I'm sorry I didn't believe you when you told me you were sexually assaulted." My dad believed me, but he was manipulated into not believing me. My mom used to always call me a liar. I was in a relationship once where the lady I was in a relationship with always understood my mom. And she would say things, and I'm like, "How can you understand that? That's diabolical." But she always told me, "Your mom took you back there on purpose. Your mom knew what was going to happen, and she did it on purpose." After that relationship ended, I began to see how similar that lady was to my mom. They thought alike. And that's when I began to realize that, yeah, my mom did take me back there. It tracks with the whole history of satisfaction of that sadism of knowing I was about to be hurt. My mom has never acknowledged the sexual abuse until I was 35. And then she used it as a way to try to hurt me. And it worked. It worked. I saw red.
Jesus.
I didn't talk to her for 2.5 years after that. But yet she would have been a better mom if I wasn't such a wild child. So I understand what I'm saying when I accuse her of that. And I full-heartedly believe it.
Yeah.
And some people do not have the ability to nurture and to care and are actually opposite of that.
Yeah.
Right. And as a culture,
Scary.
not just as Holdemans, but as a culture, we've normalized abuse. We've normalized coercive control. I can't watch a movie with my kids now without pausing it and be like, no, this behavior is not acceptable.
Wow.
If a man or a woman ever talks to you like that and they're trying to date you, run. Because we've normalized this.
Yeah.
And we have to do so much more.
Wow.
But yeah, so
So profound.
it's no wonder that I've had a feminine wound my whole life. And I've been worried about abandonment and rejection.
Yeah.
Right? Because of everything I've experienced.
Yeah.
But at the same time, what a gift.
Mm.
Because now that I've been able to work on it and recognize it within myself and heal that, and I'm not saying I've healed it all because I don't know, right?
Sure.
Every time I thought I've healed, something comes along and says, "Ha, surprise!"
Layers, right?
Yeah.
Layers.
But it really is for me
Yeah.
a gift, a blessing, because now I can see that in other people.
You have eyes in your heart.
I can see when someone else is suffering.
Yeah.
And I can treat them with the love and the care that they deserve.
Yeah.
Right?
Wow.
At my job now, I see a lot of homeless people. And I have conversations with them and I love them because you see the humanity. And once you start seeing the humanity in people, life just gets so much better.
Wow.
And, I kind of wish that I would have had that insight when I was, 20, but it's hard earned.
Yeah.
It doesn't just come to you.
Yeah.
Right?
So I know you work in law enforcement. What did helping people professionally mean to you?
It's how I got my worth. So that little boy who saw that police car drive by at, 5 years old wanted to get worth and saw a way to get worth. But he also wanted to save himself. And so when I was 16, I left the community, or when I was 16, I left my uncle and aunt's house. I worked in the community for another few months. And then I moved to a big city where my aunt, who was not a Holdeman, lived. And so my mom had been raised half Holdeman, half not. My grandma had married a man who had joined the Mennonite church long enough to marry her, and then he left. So you want to talk about predator and talk about, hunting somebody. He got what he wanted. I don't know. I didn't know him. All I know is that 3 people cried at his funeral. And I counted because I was curious.
Interesting.
Yeah. My mom and another one of her sisters had said they were sexually abused by their dad. So, I can't examine that too much because I don't know enough. But so I went to live with my aunt in a big city. I was 17 years old, not prepared for the world, right? I was I was conditioned to be a good little Mennonite boy and go into farming or trades or whatever.
Wow.
So living in a big city, I was out of my league. Um, One of the things I did is I signed up for minor hockey. I'd always wanted to play hockey, like more than pond hockey. And I played hockey, and man, I loved it so much. It was so much fun. I got injured, took a hit, and got a Charlie horse. And so then I went back to my parents for a couple of months, and then that was not working. Because my older brother and I were both living with my parents, and of course we were drinking a lot, and you can't drink. Which brings up another funny story that I have to tell. So we would drink, and we'd come back at, I don't know, 4 in the morning. And in Canada, the legal drinking age is either 18 or 19, depending which province you're in. So where I'm from, it's 18. So anyway, one night, my dad thought he'd get smart and lock all the doors so we couldn't get in the house because he didn't approve. And so one night, I'm like, oh, I'll just sneak in my younger brother's room, right? So I slide the window open. I'm crawling in through the window, and I'm halfway inside, hanging over the window, and his heavy breathing stops. And so I stop. I'm like, be motionless. And all of a sudden he says, Laverne, is that you? I'm like, yeah, how'd you know? And he's like, who else would be crawling in my window smelling of alcohol? So yeah,
Oh my
that's what that was like.
Yeah.
I think he was only 14.
Never forget those times.
Yeah. So anyway, I left after a couple months because
Yeah.
it's not working, right? So I went back to the city, went back with my aunt. My whole life, ever since I saw that police car go by, I knew I wanted to get into law enforcement. But I couldn't tell anybody that, right? Because
Wow.
they would know. But you're not planning on joining the church, right? So I started telling people that I was going to be a paramedic.
Okay.
I'm like, I'm going to be a paramedic. Because
Would that have been more acceptable in that community at that time?
Yeah. So a little bit more, but not encouraged. My understanding was to go into that, something like that, where you're going to be working with the so-called worldly people.
Yeah.
Maybe working on Sundays. You had to be a really good Christian, right? So my understanding was that the minute the preachers would have to vet me in some way, but we just talk about control.
Right.
So I just told everybody I was going to be a paramedic.
Okay.
And I started to believe it. I'm like, oh, I'm going to be a paramedic. And my aunt was a volunteer EMT on a volunteer fire department, and she had been for many years. And so every time I'd go visit her, I'm like, oh, go show me the fire trucks and the ambulances or whatever. And I started to believe that maybe I wanted to be a paramedic, right? So when I went back to the city at 18, I'm like, well, I need to decide, like, and what better place than go work security in a hospital? And somehow, like, I don't know if it was just my enthusiasm for the job or something, but somehow they hired a boy, a teenager with a grade 9 education to do security in a hospital. Like, I look back on it, I'm like, man, there had to be divine intervention there. Anyway,
Interesting.
what a wake up call.
Wow.
Wow. Like, what a wake up call. Some of the funnest times of my life I still keep in touch with a few people from that time. But I was too naive to understand that I was experiencing trauma or witnessing trauma,
Yeah.
right? And there's a lot of things that happen in a big city hospital. There's a lot of violence towards others, and suicide attempts as well. And I intervened in a few of those, and very graphic, but I didn't realize. And the worst time, I couldn't sleep afterwards. And I actually phoned my mom and I talked about it. And then I felt better. And what I didn't realize, it was just getting it off my chest.
Yeah.
I didn't need to talk to my mom, and she was probably only pretending to care anyway. Um, so yeah, I started working towards a career in law enforcement. I loved it. Of the 5, there was 5 guys I worked with on one shift, and 4 of us have all got diagnoses later in life, and 2 of us are permanently out of our chosen careers,
Okay.
which is interesting.
Yeah.
And I know the other one that's permanently out had a lot of childhood trauma too,
Mm.
right? So I got into law enforcement, started working highway patrol, and one of the first things I did is I joined the volunteer fire department
Okay.
in this small town, or a small city, I guess. And so I loved it. Like, I was having the time of my life. But I got my worth out of that, right? So I would work all day or night, whatever. I'd go to fire calls, and there was times that, like, every day of the week for a week or whatever, there was something happening.
Mm-hmm.
But I loved it, and I got worth out of it. Like, I was convincing myself I was a good person,
Mm.
right? And but because I was such a people pleaser, I couldn't handle rejection,
Mm.
right? Or I couldn't deal with personal attacks very well.
Mm-hmm.
And so highway patrol, I'm stopping a lot of people, writing a lot of tickets. People generally don't like getting tickets, right? And
Yeah.
some of them will tell you in very blunt ways what they think of you,
Okay. Yep.
right? And that would always mess with me,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, I now if I were to do it, I probably couldn't care,
Yeah.
right? Because I know who I am.
Sure.
Right. I don't care. But that used to really
Mm-hmm.
sit with me. And another thing that really, really bothered me with everything was the calls that I could tie back, or the calls or incidents where there was an emotional connection, right? Like, I remember um, dealing with 2 mental health related calls, and both of them looked like one of my younger brothers. And I remember that.
Yeah.
Never, like, in the whole scheme of things, there were nothing,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I eventually so during my time on highway patrol, that's when I met my ex-wife, and we ended up getting engaged. And, um, but I was starting to get burnt out.
Mm.
My nervous system was starting to warn me that there was too much going on. And there's a lot to be said with
Mm.
it coincided with my new relationship,
Mm.
right? Anyway, so I've been in that department for 7 years. And one of my former colleagues phoned me one night and he said, "Do you want to go work in the oil field as a contractor and make a ton of money?" And I'm like, "Yes, I'll go." He's like, don't you have to think about this for a while?" I'm like, "Nope, I'm done. Let's go." And to be fair, I had applied for a transfer and I couldn't get it. And I was working in a town of about 11,000 people. And it just, doing that much traffic enforcement in a small community, everybody knows who you are. I would drive around in my personal vehicle and people would look at me and put their
Okay.
seatbelt on, right? I'm like, fuck, right? And
Oh,
I,
so you
I
got
just,
me. There he goes. Get your
yeah,
seatbelt
um, which is like, Jesus, I'm off
I'm
duty,
off
right?
work.
But it just, yeah,
I don't know why that cracked me up. That was funny.
yeah. It was not funny at the time. It was very
Right.
annoying.
Not for you. You were
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
I'm off work. Give me
yeah.
I don't want to be labeled.
I just wanted to disappear, right?
Mm-mm.
I just wanted to be anonymous.
Right.
So I went and worked in the oil field for a while, and I would work 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. But as I was a contractor, I was at their beck and will. So sometimes I'd work like 20 days, get 5 off, right? but I was making a lot of money. During that time, we got married and had a daughter, and everything changed. She was and is daddy's girl, which is an amazing gift in itself.
Yeah.
And then we got pregnant again, and I said, okay, I'm going to be home before we have child number 2, my son, our
Mm.
son. So I found a job in law enforcement in a city near where I was from, and we moved there, and I was living the dream. Right? I was checking off all the boxes
Mm.
that society has told me I needed to check off.
Mm.
I was married. I had a family. We had bought a new house in a new subdivision. I had a great job. I was in great physical shape. Like, what more could I ask for? And it's interesting because every so often I'd heard this podcast or something a long time before, and this guy had been like, and I realized my childhood trauma was catching up to me or something.
Mm.
And so I would every so often be like, I wonder if I have like
Mm.
childhood, like I knew I had childhood trauma,
Mm.
but I didn't realize the extent, right? Like I only really thought of the sexual abuse and some of the violent incidents, physically violent incidents, right? And I'm like, well, I think I've dealt with it pretty good,
Mm.
right? And the other question I used to ask myself was, am I really meant to be in law enforcement? And I'm like, nope. And I'd always overwrite that question with, nope, I decided when I was a little boy, this is the path. And I'm like, is it though? Right. And I don't know if that's your soul, like, you know, kind of prepping you for like what might be coming. Um, in March 2017, I was involved in a traffic stop with a really irrational individual. And to make matters worse, he took a picture of me, posted it to social media, and then he filled the comments with veiled threats and lies towards me and about me, which attracted some more lies about me, which was actually kind of funny because I had apparently abused some guy 5 years earlier in the same town when I hadn't even been working in the same town 5 years earlier, right? Like it was, but the cockroaches all come out to play, right? But the worst part about that is I had seen this man's driver's license
Mm.
and I knew where he lived. He lived right around the corner from me.
Mm.
And when I look back in hindsight,
Mm.
my nervous system was just dealing with too much.
Yeah.
Not just work, but stuff that was going on at home. I was a people pleaser.
Mm.
I was trying to prove that I was this
Mm.
amazing husband and dad, an amazing officer, and my nervous system couldn't take it. And meanwhile, there's a whole bunch of stuff that's happening to me that's going, hey, that happened in your childhood a lot. It might happen again. I didn't realize it, but subconsciously. And so I went to my department and I said, you guys have to do something about this. And it wasn't threats that met the threshold for charges, but they were like, I knew what he was saying.
Mm.
And I always take my kids to the playground and I was scared I was going to run into him. And so I was pretty scared. And then my management said, no, we're not. This is nothing. And I'm like, it's something.
Mm.
What I didn't realize
Mm.
is I was being abandoned again,
Mm.
right? We know that Laverne's been abandoned. His nervous system's very well aware of that.
Mm.
So a week later, I was on duty in uniform in a marked patrol vehicle, and I saw this man again. And he was driving. He never saw me, but I had my first ever anxiety attack.
Mm.
And I should have been like, if there's a time when I should have been the most confident or powerful, that would have been then. But I didn't think anything of it, right? I'd been through lots of stuff in my career and, just let time kind of
Mm.
deal with it. So that's what I did. Then um, I was put on bicycle patrol. which was the most fun I'd ever had.
Hmm.
I got to ride bikes around parks and talk to people, and
Hmm.
like this was great. I got to sneak up on people, like it was fun. And I was only there for about a month, and they said, "Nope, you got to come over here. We got a project for you." And it was one that I didn't want, but they told me, "You're the only person that can succeed at this." So you want to talk about manipulation again, right? And especially because I'm a people pleaser,
Hmm.
how much pressure am I putting on
Hmm.
myself?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I started on that. I didn't think I was succeeding. I would ask for help, and they would just give me superficial advice, stuff that I'd already figured out. I'm like, that doesn't help me. Or when I would go looking for them, um, they were always on vacation. You know, someone that could help me was always on vacation. And so once again, I started feeling abandoned, or my nervous system did. And so through those summer months, I started getting irritable, and then I started getting angry, and then I started just getting rage. Like I'd read an email and I'd just boom, off the handle. I started feeling some physical discomfort. Like I would be clenching my jaw all the time. So my jaw was sore. I had a lot of stomach aches, from anxiety, except I didn't realize that's what it was.
Sure.
Lots of muscle pain from muscle tension.
Hmm.
And so my ex-wife started convincing me, you got to go see somebody. I'm like, no, I can't go see a therapist. Everybody think I'm weak or,
Hmm.
and it'll ruin my career. So it took her probably 2 or 3 months. And finally, I realized I had to do something. So I went through a website or Google search, and I just picked the therapist, the first one who had an available appointment, which is probably the worst way. You want the one that's booked for 3 months. Anyway, so I went, saw her, and
Hmm.
she, within like 5 minutes, she's like, you need to get away from work. I'm like, oh, like there's no way, I can't hide this, right? So I went to my doctor and I said, I need to leave from work. And he's like, how much do you need? I'm like, I don't know. I don't know anything about mental health. Like, you tell me, right? So
Yeah.
I had a course. I was lined up to go on a course, I think 3 weeks in the future. And so I said, couple days before then, I want to pretend that I'm not coming back just to do this course. So I came back, and during my time away, I noticed that nothing had changed. Like I didn't feel any different. I
Hmm.
just wasn't at work.
Hmm.
And my first day back at work, I got in a heated argument with the supervisor, got accused of insubordination, which should have been a huge red flag for everyone and me because, I was always a model employee or officer.
Hmm.
And I just went back to work
Hmm.
and just kind of pushed it behind me, thinking, this is it. I went through a month, or then they did more stuff to me. Um, and I don't know that it's necessarily intentional, but knowing that I was a people pleaser, right? So they swapped our shifts around, and the shift I was on was left without a supervisor, and they just said, "You're the de facto supervisor anyway." And so how I interpreted that was, this is a test to see if I can get promoted,
Hmm.
right? So what do? I put a lot of pressure on myself
Hmm.
because my whole life I've been begging for acknowledgement of my worth or trying to prove my worth. Wasn't long after that, I began to crash. I felt off. I didn't know, like even now, I don't know how to explain it. Like I just felt off, right? I eventually got to the point of apathy. I wouldn't do anything. I'd drive around, I'd drink coffee, I'd sit in parking lots, play on my phone, and I had no energy. And meanwhile, I'm still trying to prove that I'm an amazing husband. I'm a great dad. I'm proving my worth to everybody else, and I'm not taking time for me. I began to think about how horrible work was. Then that turned into how horrible my life was. And then it got to the point where I couldn't sleep. I would ruminate on just
Hmm.
everything. And then I was taking up to 5 times the recommended dose of a sleep aid. And the most I could get out of that was 2 hours. I would either fall asleep for a bit and then wake up and then just ruminate, or I would fall asleep and wake up when my alarm went off.
Mm.
But I wasn't getting more than 2 hours before work.
Mm.
And that lack of sleep just wreaked havoc on my mental health. And my world started to close in around me. I didn't realize it, but it was depression. And I began to feel like there's just no way out. There's no end in sight. And during my career, I've worked with some amazing people that were in peer support. And they always said, if you ever struggle, I've been there, just reach out. And the closest I came was starting to type a text message at 3 a.m.
Mm.
And then the stigma of mental health. It's like,
Mhm.
nope, you can't do this.
Mm.
And I realize now, I think the reason I didn't was because I'd never heard their story. I never knew for sure that they understood. And so that's why I'm so passionate about telling my story.
Wow.
So, because when your mind is wounded, it tells you lies, right? And I know 100% that person would have helped me so much
Mm.
if I would have reached out in non-judgmental.
Sure.
It got to the point where every night I'd be laying in bed ruminating how horrible my life was. And then I'd start planning out my own demise. And I would walk myself through it.
Mm.
But every night, my 3-year-old daughter would wake up and she'd come to bed and she'd snuggle in beside me. And every night it would be the same thing. She'd put her arm or her head right here. She would fit perfectly and get as close to me as she could. And so every night when I was thinking about it, I would feel her beside me. I would hear her breathing. And I knew I had to stay alive for her. And her little brother, of course. And so in desperation, I was too scared to talk to anybody. But there was one person in my life who I thought would help me. And I knew they could. So I went to them and I told them how bad it was. And the message wasn't received. And so a couple nights later, I tried again. Last ditch attempt. And I told them, I made it very clear how bad it was. And they looked me in the eye and they said, I know. And then they walked out of the room. But that night, the little girl woke up and came to cuddle with her dad. And so I knew I had to stay alive. I didn't know how. I didn't know anything about mental health supports or what. But I knew that I couldn't leave my kids without their dad.
Mm.
And so I just, every day, every night, when I was staying awake and thinking about how horrible my life was, I would feel her body beside me and I would listen to her breathing. And I would tell myself, you're not really suicidal. And I would tell myself it'll get better in the daytime. It never did. It was just more distractions during the day. And because I was lying to myself and self-stigmatizing, the counselor that I was seeing once a month couldn't help me. And to be fair, she wasn't asking me any tough questions. And so she just told me that you need to find another job. you need to go somewhere else. And there wasn't any other law enforcement jobs in that area. And we had just bought a new house. I was trapped. I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know how to survive. So I felt trapped. I was still suicidal. I didn't know what to do. I just kept moving forward. I just kept surviving every day, every minute. Several months earlier, before this had all happened, I had been booked for a course in the States, in Colorado. And I went down to Colorado for a police mountain bike patrol instructor course, which is as much fun as it sounds.
Yeah, sounds pretty cool.
So I was surrounded by, 20 other men and women who were exactly like me, high performers.
Yeah.
I should have been having the time of my life.
Huh.
We were, mountain biking around the foothills of Colorado and doing all cool stuff. And I enjoyed the first couple days. And then I started to worry about coming back home and going back to work. I didn't realize it, but it was anxiety and depression, just overwhelmed with it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe one day I'll go back there and ride around, and I still keep in touch with a couple of those guys from that community. Maybe do it when I'm having fun, right?
Yeah.
So I came back, ran into a firefighter I knew, and we had a long conversation, and that connection gave me a little bit of hope.
Mm.
And then within probably a month of that, a neighboring agency posted a position, and I applied for it. And I went through the process, and I was terrified that they would see through me. And they'd be like, "Oh, this guy's broken. We can't hire him." But they hired me. And so I'm like, okay, not knowing anything about mental health or psychological injuries, I'm like, I'm good now, right? And so I go, and now this was a rural agency, so it was a lot quieter, a lot less stress. But I still felt like something was off. I'm like, something's not right. And I didn't know what it was. What I didn't realize was I had suffered or experienced a psychological injury, and I needed treatment just like you would if you broke your arm. About 3 months after that, um,
Mm.
I went in on a camping trip in the mountains, like way out in the middle of nowhere. I think we were about 10 miles off the Alaska highway, like 3 hours from the nearest town. And so I'm like, oh yeah, this is like being in nature. This is my vibe. I'm going to be good after this. I I spent the whole time worrying about getting attacked by grizzly bears. So it wasn't that much fun, and it wasn't healing. Anyway, yeah. So then on October 30th, 2018, I was the first on scene to a 3-vehicle collision
Oh.
on a rural highway. And I got out of my patrol vehicle. I show up, I get out of my patrol vehicle, and this couple comes up to me, and they got 2 boys who were crying. They're not even physically injured, they're just crying. And as soon as I saw them, I lost my ability to talk. I got a big lump in my throat. I thought I was going to cry. I mumbled something to them, and they seemed happy with whatever I said. I have no idea. I remember dispatch talking to me, and I was coughing into the radio because I wanted, talking and coughing, trying to hide the fact that I was almost crying. And they said 10-4, which to me, I wasn't saying anything that could be understood. But anyway,
Yeah.
I walked up, I started checking on the occupants of the collision. There was 3 vehicles, and I didn't see the third one until I walked up to it. I was like tunnel vision. My mind was racing. I had never experienced anything like that before. There was a lady trapped in one of the vehicles. I wanted to help her. I had my firefighter experience. I couldn't help her. I couldn't even talk to her. In the back seat of a vehicle, there was a young girl that was crying. She wasn't hurt, but she was just crying. And I wanted to help her so bad, and I couldn't. I couldn't even just stand there and be with her. I had to walk away, or that's what I felt like I had to do. So I walked away. I just kind of stood on the edge, and thank God the fire department got there really quickly, because then I didn't have to pretend I was busy, right? I could just then I could stand back. There was a firefighter there that I knew, and I was watching him, and he was so poised, so professional. And I'm like, man, like, that's who I'm supposed to be. That is me. So after that night, I drove home after the end of the shift. I'm like, man, I'm broken. Like, I can't do this. And back then I used to hunt. And October 31st was the last day of hunting season for elk. And I'd been scoping out an area fairly remote. I'd put up a trail camera on a perfect trail. I knew I had lots of pictures. And so I went out there the next day to hunt. But I couldn't really hunt because I was so distracted by the fact that I was broken. Like, I fully believed that I was just broken, that I was done. I was scared that I had, full on PTSD. I had Googled my symptoms. Like, I just felt I was broken. And so I gave up. I'm like, I'm not here. Like, I can't even hunt. And so I went to get my trail camera, and I'd left the trail camera up for 3 weeks, and it was set up perfectly. Like, there was this watering hole where there was like thousands of tracks, and then the trail came out, it turned, and like right at my camera. And so I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna have some really good pictures. Open the preview, look at the pictures, and all I see are like the tips of all these beautiful antlers walking by. I couldn't even set up a trail camera properly, and I was overwhelmed. And I had the thought, I'm out here with my hunting rifle and my family won't find me. But I remembered that little girl cuddling beside her dad, and remembered my son, and I couldn't do it. And I broke down in my car or my truck and just started crying. And that's when I went to get help. I set out, I'm like, the therapist I'm seeing is not working. There has to be something out there for me. There has to be something better than this. And so I searched and did a thorough search. Found a psychologist who specialized in trauma. And what I didn't realize at the time was she only saw first responders. And her husband had been medically retired from law enforcement, so she got it. Right, professionally and personally.
Wow. How neat.
I had to wait a couple months to get an appointment with her. She was very busy, which is also a good sign.
I like your points.
Yeah.
Very
But the
insightful.
the day of my first appointment with her, it took me 20 minutes to drive to her office, and I sat and cried the whole 20 minutes. I knew that I was about to get help, and it was just so much relief. My appointment was for an hour. I sat and cried in her office for almost 2. And what I didn't realize then was all she did was hold space for me. That's it. Right? And all of us, any one of us, can hold space for someone else. If we genuinely care and we're authentic, any one of us can do that. Do you know how much better I felt after crying for almost 2 hours? Amazing. I still had a very long way to go, but any one of us can do that. During that session, though, she reached over, she leaned over, she put her hand on my knee, and she's like, "You're not alone," which is very powerful. But I didn't believe her because I'd never had anybody in my corner my whole life, right? Abandoned at every possible turn. So anyway, I embraced therapy. I loved it. I thought it was like God's gift to people, right? I don't know.
Love it.
And I learned so much about myself.
Wow. I would shiver.
But I started to realize how much my childhood affected me. And so after, some time of seeing her, she's like, I think we should do EMDR. I'm like, okay. I've heard it's some good form of therapy. Let's do this.
Yeah.
So anyway, so EMDR, if people don't know what it is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And basically you watch this little thing go back and forth at different speeds. I can't remember the whole process. But anyway, so I sit down and she asks me, think about the thing that is bugging you the most right now in your life. And that's the first time that I ever tuned into my body for my body to tell me. I was 39 years old. So I feel it. I feel, or I think about what's bothering me. And she's like, notice what you feel in your body. Guess what? 9-year-old Laverne walking up those stairs. Had nothing to do with my job. Well, I'm sure it did, right? But there's 9-year-old Laverne walking up the stairs. So I tell her. And it came to me in an instant. Like, I didn't have to think about it. It was bang, there it is. Your body knows, right? If you listen to your body, it'll tell you the truth every time. So then we think about it, and I don't really remember it. I remember watching this little dot going back and forth. I think it started fast, went slow, but I don't even remember. I know I cried a lot. It was extremely exhausting. And at the end of it, she's like, tell me something good that came out of that. And I'm like, I also didn't have to think about it. I'm a much better dad because of it. I take care of my kids much better because of that experience, those experiences. I'm much more loving. I'm much more protective. I have a much better connection with them, like everything. And how amazing is that to be able to be a good parent? So that was life-changing, recognizing that I could take something horrible and see it positively.
Yeah.
But also for realizing how much it went back to my childhood. So that was, that was a big event.
Wow.
I started, I kept going, doing as much therapy as I could. And about 6 months after I started therapy, I went to court. And there was a retired police officer there. And he was in this conversation. As soon as he saw me, he's like, Laverne, can I talk to you? So we go into this little side room and he's like, hey, what's going on? And I knew what he wanted to talk about. I'm like, what do you mean? Right? Because I'm still stigmatizing everything. And he looks at me and he goes, listen, dude, I have PTSD too. And then he told me his story. And I don't think he gave me any good advice. He just connected and reached out because
Shared humanity.
for no other reason than he'd been down the same road before. And he knew what I was going through. And that is when I knew I wasn't alone. Wow. That was like a golden hug from the universe. I knew then that I would be okay. I knew I would be okay. And yeah, I'm okay.
Wow. So
I
think what stood out to me when he said it is he didn't offer advice. He just shared humanity, connection.
Yes. Connection and seeing the humanity in each other. And that's why all my experiences are such a gift, because I can see when someone else, and you know what? Sometimes it's hard because we put up some really big masks. Yeah. And talking about really big masks, that firefighter at that collision where I was envious of him, I'm watching him, like, man, that guy's got it. That's who I'm supposed to be. 9 months later, he died from suicide. we hide very well.
Sorry to hear that.
I worked in 19 years. I worked with eight individuals who died from suicide. One was a really good friend of mine, and they were all men, and they were all high achievers and rising stars until they weren't. Right?
It's hard. Yeah.
Yeah. That's why I tell my story.
Wow. What a gift.
Yeah. Some people might think I'm crazy when I say this, but I've been blessed. When you almost don't get to experience something, it means that much more. Every single time I look at my kids, every single time I wrestle with my son on the floor, I hug my daughter, it's pretty special. And they know the part they played. Last summer? Yeah, let's just say last summer. Last summer, I got asked to do a speaking gig at a suicide awareness event. And it was outside and right beside the area where I was speaking or where the event was, there was a playground. And I brought my kids with me. I have talked about my mental health many times. I want it to be normal. There's no stigma, right? There's no stigma in my house about, not feeling great or, being sad or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I started, so my son, he's younger and he just wants to play, right? He's a boy, he wants to play. My daughter, and I told them ahead of time kind of some more of what I would talk about because I didn't want it to be a surprise to them. So I'm up there and I start talking and I see my daughter run, like booking it right in front of me. And she finds a seat like right in the front row. And she's just like standing there, just in like looking at me in awe. And she told me later, she's like, Dad, my favorite part of the story is where I came and slept beside you. And
So sweet.
almost not having that just makes it so much better. Yeah. Right? Like knowing how close I could there's no excuse to not have fun, to not, heal from your wounds. Every day is better. And the way I look at it is if I can be here telling my story on this earth, you can do whatever the fuck you want to. Right? Just set your mind on it and you can do it. You might have to heal first and, get through some trauma. But
So hopeful.
the treasure you seek is in the cave you fear to enter. And that's healing. And I began, so my psychologist threatened me with EMDR again. And I'm like, no way.
Yeah.
That was exhausting.
Okay.
And I cried too much. And so she said, come see me in 2 weeks. If this is still bothering you, we're going to do EMDR on it. And I can't even remember what it was, but I worked through it because I'm like, I'm not doing EMDR again.
Huh.
But really,
Wow.
to me, all EMDR was tapping into my inner childhood pain. And then I learned how to do that myself, right? And every single time I did it, I felt so much better. And so now I go into these dark caves knowing that I'm going to find I'm going to go through this dark cave, this dark tunnel, and it's going to be dark and it's going to be scary. But on the other side, I'm going to walk out and there's going to be this amazing view, this valley, with the most beautiful place you've ever seen. And that's how I think of my healing.
I love
And so
that.
I go into this valley and I'm walking around and it's all great and everything. And then something else comes up. And I'm like, oh, I gotta go in this tunnel again. But I know what's on the other side. Except what's on the other side is something even more amazing. And so now back then I was too scared to do EMDR again. But I've sat and cried into my journal and felt my childhood pain like so many times. Because I know that it just gets better and better and better.
Wow.
It's so amazing.
Yeah.
So it was a lot.
I'm speechless, Laverne.
That's good.
Yeah. So, there's nothing to add, but thank you. Like, when I'm speechless. Is there anything more you'd like to share today, Laverne?
Yeah, absolutely. We can all help each other. We all affect everyone else's mental health. And I really realized that because when I was suicidal, I was screaming for help in every way I could think of without actually telling people. And I was ignored. But there were signs. And so it's so important to be attuned to each other and realize how we all affect everyone. And if you are going through something right now, just keep going. It gets better. Reach out for help. There are other people out there who understand what you've been through. And it's so important to help each other. Just
What a beautiful gift. I want to really just sit with what you said there. Like your ability to see people well is such a gift. And your attunement to be able to see what's unsaid is so clearly it's beautiful.
it's
It's
hard.
what we need.
We do.
We need more of that.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, it's hard earned experience.
And
Right.
and yeah, it just shows so powerfully, like as you share your story too, like the power of self attunement and claiming back that young self and being attuned. It awakens that ability to see people around you. It's contagious.
Yeah.
It's so contagious.
Yeah. It is. Healing is contagious.
Yeah.
Healing helps other people. And we are not who we think we are. When you start going into your background and healing that, then you get to decide who you are and be who you want to be.
Wow.
Right?
So good. Thank you, Laverne, for making the trip to share this beautiful, beautiful story. I'm just so glad and honored to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
I know your story is going to be a gift to many. So thanks again.
I hope so.
I want to give you something to today.
Oh, goody. Thank you.
Something to take with you.
Ooh, there's lots in here.
Yeah.
I had to buy my kids Joyride candy, so
Oh yeah.
I had to stock up on that because we don't really get that in Canada.
I'm
so
sure they're gonna be
Thank you.
excited to see Dad again.
yeah. Yes.
And your love for your little one shines through so strong, and that really touched me today. They're blessed little guys.
I'm so
Yeah.
blessed to have them, and every millisecond that I get to give them love is healing for me
Wow.
because I'm loving myself that I didn't, giving myself the love that I didn't get.
How empowering.
Because you get what you give, right? And so the more love I give them, the more joy I get back.
Wow.
Right?
I love that.
Yeah. Life is amazing.
Beautiful. Thanks again, Laverne. And for those of you who watched, please leave a comment. Let Laverne know what parts of his story that you connect to, relate to, and subscribe to the channel, and please share this story with others who can benefit and experience connection and understanding, because that's what this is all about.